Welcome, fellow last places, to another episode of LPF Debrief, our first one of the year. We are back, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah. And on today's episode, we will be talking about The Last of Us on HBO Max. It is finally here. And if you guys have followed our main show, you guys know how excited we were, how nervous we were. Well, I was. I know, speaking from my vantage point, how nervous I am because of how much we love this game series. And it's finally come to become a TV show. And here we are. We're going to give you guys our review on the first episode. Joining me, as always, we have Chris. Chris,
I made it.
how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I just want to get this out of the way real quick. I told you I needed to go on a small It's going to be very small, okay?
Okay.
You don't know what it is yet. Here we go.
Yeah.
Paramount Plus.
Uh-huh.
You saw that? You saw what they did, right? They got the script. They got the script from the game. And then they said, "You know what? This shit's good. Let's just bloop, put it in real life. Let's not recreate a story, all right? So give Halo to HBO and you're safe. That's it. That's all you got to do."
Listen, and that was one of the things. I'm glad you brought up HBO because that was one of the saving graces of this, right? For me, like when I was nervous, obviously from the jump, I was like, this is one of my favorite game series. Like, I don't want them to mess up an already perfect story. There's nothing you can really do to change this story to make it any better. Or, you could probably add a few little things in here, but overall, we don't need to change anything. And I'm really happy that HBO has this because HBO, minus the last season of Game of Thrones, which wasn't their fault. It was their fault because they still released it, but what were you going to do at that point, right? But minus the last season of Game of Thrones, they only give us gold, really.
Bro.
So for us to for them to have the backing and knowing that it was them, definitely gives you a nice, gave me a nice ease moment. So
that was the only thing that I said it in the past. Whenever you said we were worried about it, we talked about it in the past. Whenever they announced the show, and I was like, the only reason why I'm not scared is because it's HBO. I'm putting my whole faith into HBO. If Amazon or Netflix or anybody said like, "Hey, we're doing The Last of Us," I would have been like, "Man, here we go. It's about to be rough."
So, yeah, and Amazon is starting to get that cred too because where they do have really good.
Yeah, we'll see with BioShock. They have BioShock, so
they have BioShock and God of War.
Oh, and God of War. Well, I'm more excited for BioShock right now.
Nothing scares me more than God of War. But we'll talk about that on another day. But let's get into episode 1. This is directed by, the title of the episode was "When You're Lost in the Darkness." If you guys have played the game, you know exactly where that's from, what the whole story is about that. It was directed by Craig Mazin, he's also the co-writer of the episodes, along with Neil Druckmann. I guess we'll just go talk about the episode itself. I will say,
real quick, spoilers. Yeah. If you have not played the game, the people that have played the game, this is literally, because I had a friend ask too, how is the show? They've never played the game, so they didn't know how true it was to it. This is ripped straight from the game. It gives us the extra, right? Which is what we want. They gave us a little bit of more in depth on those scenes because normally the gameplay, you're playing through it. The fact that they gave us the in-depth part was perfect. The way they handled it was perfect. They didn't have to change anything. It's like literally we have to fill in this spot to hit the next story beat. And they did a really great job. But yes, if you have not played the game, spoilers ahead.
For sure. And also, like, as you were talking about adding tidbits and stuff like that, that beginning scene, right, where they had them talking about like how the fungus virus and stuff like that. And again, those are cool parts, right? Because for me, since the story is already perfect, giving in that little bit, because you have TV time where you can have like a conversation about something like that, and us as the people who've gamed and played it, we're like, okay, well, that's a little more rewarding to us, because it's like, yeah, we knew it was a fungal infection, but now we're reading about these hearing this conversation about how it would affect us and why it would wipe us out. So going into the first episode, obviously, like, I did not think we were going to get the scene in the first episode. I thought we would get a little more time with, but before we even get there, the first thing that I noticed, and I knew that I was like, I'm hooked, was as soon as I saw Pedro Pascal come in and hear his voice, I was like, bro, that's it. I was like, I'm in. I was like, I'm in. And it's nothing against Pedro Pascal. I love Pedro Pascal. I think he's fantastic. He was fantastic in Game of Thrones. He was fantastic as Mando. Like, I had no worries that he was going to be fantastic. But when you hear his voice in this like episode, like, I'm telling you right now, like, as a person who's played Last of Us like plenty of times, I could, like, if I was looking away, I would have 100% thought that was Joel. Like 100%, because he has that draw, right? He has the Joel draw. He has that, like, that level, like that down talk, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just so perfect, and you love to see that in actors, right? When they can display that range, and then, like, for him to like be having these conversations the way he was with Sarah and the way that he sounded, I was just like, you know what? Any worry that I had, and again, I didn't have much besides, like, obviously don't mess up the story. I was like, it was gone after that, just gone. So, what were your first impressions of just seeing Joel on screen?
Just seeing Joel on screen, dude, it was comforting. Like I told you before, I felt like I should have had the controller in my hand, because I thought quick actions were gonna start popping up at me, like hit X, hit square, all this other stuff. It was fantastic, and then his brother comes in, Tommy comes in, and I immediately thought, right, great pair, but also I don't know if you got this sense. I was looking at them and I was like, man, we could have a Way Out show.
Like
also, these two could be like
they're ready.
Yeah, because they look like those two. So or at least Tommy looked more like the characters than Pedro. But I was like, man, these guys are so good. And the fact that if you are watching it on HBO, at the end of the credits and stuff like that, they have the little HBO always usually does it with their shows. They have they give you like 5 minutes of behind the scenes of like, and that goes to the point of what you were saying, that you didn't think you were going to get that scene in the beginning. They made you they made Sarah feel important to you very quickly, and they did, and it was a good pace. She is the main character of the beginning of the first episode, and you follow her, and then it passes. And the way they pass the lead torch to Joel, it was very smooth, unnoticeable, and you just kind of go into it. But yeah, man, Joel looked great. The way, he's just, you can tell he's always stressed, right? He's just like, life sucks. I got my daughter though, and I just need to work hard for her. I need everything to go right for her. So, he's fantastic, man. I love him.
And I mean, bringing up the Sarah point, which she was also fantastic. Just the acting, the casting, just nothing to worry about there. And you know what? This is where those differences lie, right? Where those differences between the games and the movies, games, movies, whatever medium you're going to that you like, right? Obviously, when you're gaming and you're playing the like games in a certain scenario where we're playing through, right? You don't want to do the same kind of conversations that they had inside of the game as far as that beginning portion, right? Because again, like, you want Sarah to mean more, especially to people who haven't played the game, right? Because they don't have the little side tidbit conversations that they did in the game, right? And remember, even in the game, you play as Sarah for a little bit, because remember when you're doing the whole walk around scene. So like, but also you don't in a gaming environment, you don't need to know the importance of what a father and daughter relationship is as much as seeing it on screen, right? Because you could have done what they did in the game and it would have been 5 minutes, but it doesn't draw for the episode.
People would have fallen off if we had to go into town and do all this other stuff. Like,
and you do all
like,
this stuff.
What's going on here?
So it's nice to have that pace where, especially the scene where she goes and, obviously she goes to steal the money to fix her father's watch, right? So like that scene is a lot more impactful because we're falling in love with Sarah's character,
Mhm.
right? Like who she is, and we know how much she loves her father. So of course that scene, adding those additional scene, like that additional scene and that pacing for her is fantastic because we want that, right? We want that as people who are now watching a show opposed to playing it. We want that, like, that feel. And I honestly thought they were going to do it a little bit longer beforehand, right? Like I thought that we would get and not saying that you needed to do this. I'm just saying like I thought they were going to build it up just a little bit more. So then like by episode like the end of episode 2 or like in episode 3, they would tear our hearts out. But like again, the pacing was fantastic because this is basically how the game went, right?
Yeah.
The game went with the same kind of flow, but over and I mean some of these shots were just absolutely fantastic. When she's in the house and the grandmother is starting to change and like she just goes back to normal, bro. I was like, yo. And like as for us, we both know what's happening. We
Yeah.
know what's about to happen.
Yeah.
And even knowing that, it didn't change how tense those scenes were. Like, and that's where I always get into that argument where people are like, well, you can't just copy the game. Yes, you can. Because when you're viewing something and not playing it, you can still capture that same tension that you do in the
I
game.
got it all,
And
man.
I got it all.
Yep. I was I mean, you guys know I'm not a fan of scary stuff, right? Last of Us, I pushed through. It wasn't like the gameplay's not that scary. You get some jump scare moments and stuff like that.
I mean,
Um
clickers are scary.
yeah, yeah. When we hear the first one, I'm going to be
Yeah.
very tense. But
Yeah.
bro, that whole grandma scene, I'm sitting there, I'm like, man, if she just because I thought this is where I thought they were gonna change the story a little bit. Because in the game, you know how you said like, you don't have the neighbors, you don't have anything like that. It kind of starts off with them with the movie. The movie is the same thing. They wake up and they have to go. Like it's like here we go, we got to start. Um, so I thought like the grandma was gonna attack her, like the way they separated Sarah from Joel.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, he's not gonna be back till 9 p.m. I was like, wait, is he gonna save her in the city? Like, what's gonna happen here? So I was waiting for that. But I've learned from the TV show and from the game, right? If this were to happen in real life, okay, let me give you a survival guide real quick on this. All right. If you have a dog, listen to the damn dog. Okay. They know. They know when somebody changed. You saw it. All right. It happens in possession movies, in ghost movies, all that stuff. They know. Okay. 2, grandma, I love you. Okay. But if I see you get out of the wheelchair, I'm not going to be like, oh my God, it's a miracle. I'm going to look around the world and be like, what viruses are out? What's going on right now? Okay. And then I'm going to take my step back. Okay. I'm going to leave you in your house. I'm not going to do nothing because you're my grandma. I love you. But that's step 2. Number 3. All right. Don't trust, right? You're in America. If this happens to you in America, do not trust anybody, military, nothing, because they will shoot first, always shoot first. And we saw that. Okay. The people it's a joke, but people are always joking about like, oh man, I hope the zombie apocalypse happens. I'm ready for it. Yeah. They showed you in Last of Us this episode that people are ready to go.
No, people are not slowly reacting.
Oh
You
yeah,
know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah. They're gonna be shooting you first. They don't care. But yeah, man, it was crazy. When the dog goes, what was the dog's name?
Mercy.
Mercy. When she's outside and I saw the door open, and I had that moment when she's going next door, and I was like, girl, don't
Please
go
back. Just go back.
I was like, you are a person. All right. You are a person that is very smart. Do not go in that house. I was sitting there and I thought the door, when she comes in, that slow creep, I thought I'm waiting for jump scares. So I'm kind of glad that they're slowly doing that draw of everything. And that scene was perfect. Whoever that old lady was did a great job also. It was very weird to see them. I wasn't expecting her to go back to normal. That was the only thing. So when she's sitting there and then Mercy's sitting there like whining, like that's not her anymore. Then I was like, oh, okay, this is a cool beat to it. It's still taking over and everything like that. So
I think it hadn't fully taken over. I think it started to, and and that's why I think it was really important for afterwards. And I'll go back to that scene in a second. But when afterwards, you notice how when the little girl gets to the their sanctuary, pretty much of the FDA, whatever it's called, FEDRA. When she gets there, when the little boy gets there, and then you see the timetable it takes in order for the infection to take place. So I'm wondering, like, they did that for a reason, and I think that was also to complement that scene to where you're basically like, okay, it's going to take a little time before it gets there, but also like you're not going to change instantly. So I think that was the whole point of she was infected, this thing already happened, but not, it wasn't like I did think I was there with you. I thought she was going to jump out the chair and then
I thought we were popping off right away, but they made sure it's just like, no, this infection takes time, and they're going to play around with that. I'm sure we're not, even though we're getting it straight from the game. I'm sure we're going to get other scenarios where somebody, we're going to have that moment, and we're going to be following somebody, and you're going to see that draw, and they'll be able to put it. I mean, I would say through the. Like say somebody gets bit in the first episode, and then they finally turn in episode like 3 or 4. I would expect that, but from what we got from the first episode, the way they're like chopping the game up is kind of like how you would play the game too. Because where the episode, I'm not gonna talk about the ending yet, but where it ended is where I would probably save and be like, I'm gonna take a break.
We would have had an auto save.
And
I think they're going to do a lot of those things, which. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, this is scheduled for 9 episodes, so or something, or 8 or something like that. So yeah, definitely they're going to have nice cutoff points. I mean, realistically, if you played the game enough, you probably know exactly what each stop point is going to be, because it feels like you said, like it would be a stop point in that scenario. So like I said, and bringing back to the point where I was talking about with the timeline. They basically said if you get bit in the neck, you're going to transform, which is why when the scene when they run, when Sarah runs out and they finally she meets up with Joel, and they remember the guys that they turned because that old lady didn't listen. The lady didn't listen when Joel was like, "Get back in your house." She came back out. She was like, "Oh my God, Joel!" and got eaten up.
Saw that guy run after her. I'm like, "Oh my God,
bro!" Will you see this level-headed man? Okay, he, for whatever reason, right? Joel has been, from what we've gotten from Joel, he's a very level-headed person at this time. If he tells you to go back into your house, don't come out for anything, and you come back out, you deserve to be eaten.
Well, don't forget the other red flags. You had jets flying over all day. You heard the cops. The TV's going off. So if Joel does that, I'm sitting there outside. I'm like, something's up with this man.
Something's not right.
Yeah, and also, why is that guy bleeding? That's across the street.
First of all, he was not only was he bleeding. Okay, remember he had a gash.
Yeah,
pretty much like that. My thing is, like you said, helicopters flying, planes all over the place. What makes you think being outside would be a good choice? Like, you know what I mean? And clearly, Joel is driving off where he's hitting people. Clearly, he is running from something. That does not mean, hey, I'm going to stay here. Let me go check on the people he just ran over, because that, like, he just did it out of nowhere.
To be fair, I would not be in that house either. I'd get in my car. As soon as I saw that truck pulled off, I'm like, getting in the car.
Listen,
here we go.
As soon as Joel said what he said, I was out. Like, bro, if this man is running people over, that means I got to get out of there too. Like, you know what I mean? And it's one of those things that we always joke about, but it's true. You see one person running, you run too.
Yep.
Okay. And you ask those questions later, because I don't want to find out what you're running from. And you because that thing ain't eating me. No way. I need to get out of there. And that's what she should have did. And you know what she didn't do? She didn't do that, and that's why she got ate. So,
sticking with real quick, I wanted to go back to the beginning of the news, the news part. I just wanted to pass up the tone that they set with that guy. Like, the newscaster's joking around. He's trying to keep the conversation fluid, and when he's like, "Oh, the world could change and get hotter," and then this fungus could live and everything. That beat in the audience, like you feel it in the audience, you feel it in the news director. He's like, hold on. He has that moment of like, this could really happen. Like, oh my God. Yeah. So hats off to that. I felt that moment. Also the small tidbit of when you see the grandma after she turned and she's like down and she lifts up the grass or the grass that's in her mouth.
Because it's fungus.
Yeah. That was a cool thing. I don't think that was in the game. Was it?
No, well, I mean, it was always like fungal.
I know it's fungal, but you had the spores and everything on you.
But we never saw everyone you see in the game wasn't freshly turned.
Yeah, true.
So that was another thing. Yeah. You know, like most of the cases, I mean, even in the beginning of the game, you don't really see them like, you know, like as they did in the show. Mm-hmm. And that might have been something they changed in the remaster, like the remaster. I didn't play because I'm not paying $70.
I am when it comes out on PC in March.
Yeah, no, still not getting it unless it goes down to $30.
Oh, okay, well,
which is a fair price.
Okay,
because I already bought the game and you made a remaster 2 years ago, but we're not talking about that. But so yeah, and so that was a really cool thing that they did because they do want to show that it's more of a fungal infection, which is what the game does show, especially with a scene we'll talk about later. But they wanted to show that, and I think that's why the flower was like the grass and stuff was a little more potent because they wanted you to know that it was a fungal infection. Mm-hmm. I think that was a great way of showing it. But then we get the scenes. I mean, when I mean pulled from the game, these like the next couple of scenes were just legit pulled from the game. The house being on fire as they go away from the directly from the game.
Yep.
Even when they do the highway thing,
when
he's looking at the highway, like directly from the game, when the car crashes, the plane thing, like the people in the street, like the street was exactly the same in the game. Like,
bro, even
it was insane.
The thing that shocked me the most was the truck flipping over, and then he's like, Tommy, and when you separate from Tommy, I was like, dude, and he's like looking through, he's like, oh, I'll go around, and I was like, this is perfect, like video game moment of like, oh, I guess we'll see him later. We got to figure this out ourselves.
Yeah,
I was like, what? We're doing this?
Yeah, it was fantastic. Yeah. And like I said, going back to his Pedro Pascal's, like that was legit. How it sounded like legit to the T. Was like he was like Tommy, like the way he says, like it's insane to me. Like just how actors can do like pull these things and just like because Pedro Pascal talks with an accent like his Hispanic accent, so like even when people from London and Africans, like when they're able to just talk like I don't want to say perfect English, but like Americanized English, it's so crazy to me how they can turn it on and off.
Yeah,
like it's so crazy. But even that moment like you were talking about, the whole, when the truck flips and then Sarah's knee, like, ankle is bad. And that's when you already started like, and that's when like, I mean, obviously once they left their home stuff, I was like, we're getting it today. Cause I was like, first of all, this episode's an hour and a half. We got like an hour to go. There is no way. I was like, there's no way this is making it to the next episode. I was like, I guess we're doing this now. So I paused it and I was like, let me recollect myself because, again, when we get there, but the whole scene was perfect, right? The way that the infected are running because they're not really zombies, but like the infected ran, like how that guy was running after them basically, and just like he was like crawling, kind of like it looked so cool, right? Because then it's gonna make for some really intense scenes that we'll see later on. And then, as he's going away, we see the separation like you were talking about. They get separated. And then as soon as he walked out and they were talking about the river, I was like, oh no. I was like, here we go. I was like, let me pause real quick. I went to go get some water because when this scene happened in the game, I had to stop playing the game for like a day because like it was very emotional and they perfectly performed it again, right? And it's just like and again and this is one of those things where I don't know what's worse, like knowing what's about to happen or just seeing it for the first time, because there's a real weird thing. Like I knew what was gonna happen, but like did that? I felt like it made it worse because
I feel like,
I know
I
I'm
feel like
watching
the first time people seeing it,
the people who watch the show for sure are heartbroken.
oh my God. Yeah, they're
yeah,
they're killing kids.
yeah,
What's
they
going
are
on?
heartbroken because again, they don't know the tone, right? We have the advantage of knowing that was going to happen.
Yeah.
But like the people who watch that for the first time, I like if because again, when we experienced that for the first time, I was broken.
Yeah.
Like broken because I could not believe that happened. Like, and it's real. It's one of those things where it's like, are we really taking out kids? Like, what the hell's going on here? Like, who's doing this? So like when that scene starts and he's like, look, man, like relax, like it's good, like we're not sick, we're not anything, and then you hear the guy get the command saying like, whatever, like, whatever he said, most likely like take him out if you have to.
Well,
Or like
you hear the tone shift in his voice. He's like, yes, sir.
mm-hmm.
Yes, sir.
No, but he also says he's
yes,
like,
sir.
really? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's like, really? Because he says that. And then he's like, well, you have to do it. And then it's like, bro. And then it starts to happen. You see the gunshots, and I was like, no. So the tears already had started because I know what happened. Okay. And then like you notice that Joel got hit, but it wasn't a bullet. So
Yeah.
you're like, bruh. So then when Tommy shoots the thing, and then Tommy, when he does played by Gabriel Luna, when he's like, oh no, and I was like, oh crap. I was like,
it's the hyperventilating for
bro.
me, man. I hate it. Oh my God. Because when an adult dies or gets shot, most of the time you get that moment. It's sad, and they're like, it's gonna be okay, blah blah blah, and then they, take that deep breath. But when a kid, it's just like the pain is going. She did it perfectly. The pain is going. She even said in the behind the scenes that her adrenaline was kicking up. Breathing hard. He's trying to move her. It's super painful. You can't do anything. It was just, it was, yeah. It brought back that, it is heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking because there's nothing that can be done, especially in the scenario that they're in, right? Like anything that happens that could be potentially fatal in that moment, what can you do, right? You can't do anything. And that's what I think is the most heartbreaking part for Joel's experience, right? Like from Joel's perspective, it's like I have to try to calm my dying daughter down while my brother is watching. And like I am powerless in this situation. Like I can't do anything to calm myself down. Like my daughter is dying in my arms. Like, you know what I mean? Because some dude decided that he wanted to shoot first and ask questions later, or like because he got orders. But at the end of the day, like my daughter is now gone because of this, right?
Yep.
And it's such a hard scene to take in because like there's nothing he could have done. Like there's literally nothing. Like he was holding his daughter because clearly he did, she has a broken ankle. He's trying to get her to safety, and there's nothing he can do. And I think that's what. And then, like you said, the whole act, like everything else happens, right? Where she's breathing heavy, like it's a dying child. It's Joel not being able to do anything. It's Tommy noticing that she's already probably not gonna, because Tommy has already processed it, right?
Yeah.
Like once he sees her shot, Tommy's like, "There's nothing we can do. Like, what are we gonna do?"
I mean, you hear him say, "He's like Joel."
Yeah.
He's like,
yeah.
But
also, like,
it's
what is Joel supposed to do?
Exactly.
Right?
He's
like,
the dad. It's a very real moment, mostly because they didn't take the normal TV route of, like a close up shot of like everything's gonna be okay or anything like that. Like him comforting her. It's a very we're in panic. I don't know what to do. Like the world's crumbling around me, and you don't even get like the last like big breath that you would normally get in a movie or a TV show. She just like, as he's like holding her crying at some point when he's like shaking her, you see her eyes are open. She's gone. And it's just like, oh wow, they didn't take a beat. There's no sentiment. It's just panic. It's like what you would feel in that moment. And I thought that was crazy. Very, very big attention to detail of, like I said, they're trying to make it feel as realistic as possible. And it definitely felt in that moment
and
of what was going on.
Yeah, and the game did too. Like because that again, it also feels because again, we played that game in 2013, which is 11 years ago at this point, which is kind of crazy. And graphics weren't what they are. So like seeing real humans go through this now, it is making it more impactful. And I think the whole goal of this show is, like I said, don't try to break what's already like in our opinion, a lot of people's opinion is already a perfect story. You just need to portray these things to a new audience. So now this new audience can see it, and the people who haven't watched it or haven't played it can experience this fantastically told story through, real life, like real eyes. Like we're going to love it anyway.
Yeah,
Because I don't
exactly.
know a Last of Us fan who's watched episode 1 who hasn't said that it wasn't intent. Like there isn't one. So again, it's bringing in that new audience, and then Sarah, that like I said, that scene was made perfectly, and then that pretty much stops like the first half of the episode, which pretty much the first half of the game, not,
Yeah,
not even half of the game, but that's the
it's the
first
opening.
opening section of the game.
Yeah.
Right. And then, the music comes on when everything, and then we see 20 years has passed. And I don't know if it was that big of a gap in the game, but
I think it was.
yeah,
But
it probably
also,
was the same amount.
I have a question too, because I feel like this was another thing too of them changing the story a little bit. But go ahead and continue with your thought. I'll bring it
Yeah.
up whenever we get to that point. But it's coming.
But yeah, so we kind of get to now we see Joel, obviously a broken man at this point. We know that what's happened to him has obviously crushed him, and now the world has changed. Right, 20 years of this now. This infection is all over the place now. Everything everything is pretty much martial law. People are taking control. You can work side jobs. You can do whatever you need to do to try to finance what you need, but like the world is clearly not what it was. And that was pretty much, what they were trying to portray there. And that's where you need the time shift to get to what we basically played, right? In that scenario in the game, where we're getting to a world where now we have to play through this world of all this crazy stuff that's happening. We see the Joel is trying to find essentially he's trying to find Tommy, and because Tommy got left out somewhere on a mission for the Fireflies, which we get into all of those other characters now. Once we get there, we meet Tess for the first time. Here she's doing a pretty much a deal, because a lot of these things are always deal based, right? Because money isn't a thing anymore, right? And even in the game, remember the currency was like nails and stuff, so that you could upgrade your guns and things like that, right?
Yep.
So there's no currency anymore. There's only trade and barter, and we see that the guard wanted some drugs that Joe was able to get, so he was able to get some extra money for it, so that he could try to buy this battery, which pretty much is what they're trying to do, so he can get this truck, so he can leave. We see that Tess gets pretty much got beat up because they thought it was someone else, and it was one not her, like her people, even though Tess is pretty well known around there. And we see that she gets beat up. We know Joel is going to react a certain way if he sees this. So they get that whole deal gets made. We do see the scene where Joel, like they kind of expanded on the fact that Joel and Tess were like a thing, an item,
Yeah,
kind of thing.
that was another question. I was just like, what are they like? I know he had some feelings towards her, but I
Yeah,
didn't know
but
if
they
they were
were
actually like
they didn't
together.
express it as much in the game, like as far as just the thing. And I don't think necessarily. Obviously, I feel like that's not another thing that's not a big change, because like realistically, they kind of hinted at it in the game.
Mm-hmm.
But the only difference is now that we saw a scene where they were like holding each other, where she was holding him. But like realistically, in a time like that, he's probably going to connect to the first person he can,
Yeah.
and Tess was probably that person. So it wasn't like a big difference to where I was like, oh, what the heck? But like, it's like, yeah, I could totally like that could have totally happened in the game also. Like, it
Yeah.
just wasn't explained or anything, or like mentioned. But yeah, we see that, and then obviously she wants to now. We also get to meet Ellie finally, played by Bella Ramsey, who instantly, as soon as she came on the screen, I was like, well, she's got the Ellie attitude down pat, that's for sure. Because because if you guys remember the beginning of Last of Us the game, when you first meet Ellie, she is just like that. She is really feisty. She's a teenager, right?
Yeah.
Like she's a teenager doing the things where like I don't want to do, and I don't want to go into too much detail, but if you play the Last of Us DLC where you're in the mall, you'll understand the name drop that Marlene does, who, fun fact, is the voice actress of Marlene in the game.
Is she? Because I thought in the thing she said that she auditioned for it and she didn't get it.
No, that's what I'm saying. She played it.
Okay.
And then she said that like she never thought she would be able to
to do the show. Okay. So
to
it
play
was
the show.
okay.
So
I have to actually go back and play that. That's the only part of Last of Us I never played was the DLC.
Oh man. Oof. Ooh, wait. So listen. But yeah, it tells you, because she played that. Marlene plays that role, and then but she was younger because again, 2013.
Mm-hmm.
That's why she said in the, and I mean really realistically, they would have shot that. I mean, she would have probably started recording that in 2012 because auditions probably were like in 2011 or something like that. So that's what she was saying when she was saying in the behind the scenes. She was saying that she had time to grow into who Marlene is in the game.
Yeah,
I mean in the game because she was a lot younger, but now she's grew up into what Marlene would be. And then she said it was a really cool thing, like definitely worth checking out because she kind of just explains like how she became the character, like, and it felt like it was always part of her. So for her to be able to reprise that role like 10 years, later, as the real person, I think is is fantastic. So, but we see the chemistry there. We see how quickly Ellie's like, listen, leave me alone. Like, I want to go away. Like, I want to go home. But again, if you do play that DLC, you'll know where she came from. And the name drop that she does, where she's like, what's her name? Gosh, hit me. When she mentions, why did that person, did you think that? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It started
But
with
you know who I'm talking
Riley?
about. Yeah. Riley. Yes.
Okay.
Because, yes, Riley, which, again, play the DLC. I don't know if they're going to get into this, so I don't want to say it because I know what happened. But when that name drops, it was because of the DLC content that was for Last of Us. So, but yeah, Bella Ramsey comes in, and I think she does a fantastic job at showing us what Ellie's potentially going to become and how she's going to be with Joel, and just that chemistry itself. I think is going to be fantastic. But what was your first thoughts when you saw Bella as Ellie?
I thought her face looks, she makes it's gonna be weird to say, her face makes her look tiny, like in a way. So she looked a lot smaller to me, and then whenever Joel finally shows up and she stands next to him, I'm like, this girl's big, like she's a tall girl.
Yeah.
But her attitude towards it sounded good, was good. Voice wise, I think she's doing a perfect job, especially like you were saying earlier. The way they transition their what would you call it, accent? Their accent into English was just perfect, man. And when Joel shows up, you immediately get that connection of like, in real life, these two just connect. It just works. Yeah. So it was a really cool scene to see. And her being yelling at the other Fireflies, like, I'm not supposed to be here. That's in the game. Her, flicking them off when she's counting and doing the checks and all this other stuff. She's just throwing a fit. And then also, like, she has that attitude of like, I know the world has fallen apart, but nobody's listening to my feelings right now. Yeah. So whenever she's pulling the chain and then the water drops on her, she's like, are you kidding me? Like, come on, man. Yeah. So it was a very fun moment. The other question I was going to ask, because it was, I feel like this happened in the game before Joel meets Ellie with Tommy. Am I crazy? There's a moment there with because I mean, we get it later in the scene when Joel's like, you guys turned my brother against me. I was like, okay, I remember this. But also in the game, I felt like we had a moment with Tommy that we had to go take. It was like a mission, and then you meet Ellie, and then you leave. Something happened before they leave.
I would say,
if that makes sense. I don't want to spoil it because I don't know if it's going to be like if they just move this position.
I would say that happened, but that's one of those things where I feel like it makes sense in a game and not make sense
in here. Yeah, you're like,
why are we going? Like, you're just be like, why did we?
Yeah,
why are we having this thing now? Like, when later on you're probably going to have the same conversation you're talking about.
Yeah, they're
like
probably
in real time.
It's probably
Yeah,
building up, and it's gonna be like a
yeah,
what the heck moment.
yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
So yeah, that totally makes sense to me. And then we know that Joel and Tess are out to try to go get that battery. They're out to go get revenge, basically because of what just happened. And then we find out that they're dead. Right? Those guys are dead. What happened? We don't know yet. We go inside. We find that Marlene is there, and clearly they shot up the place. And then Ellie tries to attack Joel. Joe kind of just swaps her away.
No, it wasn't a swap. It wasn't a swap, dude. He bodied her into the wall.
Like, he just like throws her.
Yeah, when she falls out and he throws her into the wall, I was like, oh, like it was hard.
It was rough. But we know Ellie's a tough cookie.
I know, but I totally expected her. I thought it was gonna be like a Dragon Ball moment. She was gonna go through the next two rooms.
Too much.
He threw her.
But even before that happens, we find out why Ellie's being held by the Fireflies, and they don't tell you in direct at the time because they're saving it for later. And again, one of those moments that we already know why. And
which
then
is so cool,
audience,
man. This is like I keep saying whenever I called out Paramount Plus, it's that moment of like, well, how are we supposed to get the people who play the game to enjoy the show? I'm enjoying the show. The fact that I know what's gonna happen
doesn't change it.
It doesn't change it at all. And then I'm like, the whole time I'm just trying to piece together of like what you guys are gonna do for this moment. But so I'm excited for the people that have never seen it. That's great. Yeah. So yeah.
Also, the realistic factor of all of this, right? And as a person who's gamed and does these kind of like plays before, we're not the target audience.
No.
Like, and I think that's something that like Hollywood and all of them kind of misconstrue, right? Because like, regardless of how much we're just the baseline, right? So like, if we did a percentage, I'm going to say that maybe, let's say we're such a, like, gamers are not like, obviously gaming has grown and stuff like that, but as far as knowing the stories and moving the needles to the ratings that you're getting, gamers are not going to give you that huge needle drop, right? Because let's be real, I don't know, I can't tell you off the top of my head how much Last of Us sold, but let's just take the number. Let's take a number like, I don't know, let's say it sold 2.5 million, right? And half of these people have access to the TV show, right? You only have like, a couple hundred, you only have 100,000, like 500, 600, 700, 800, even like a mil that might potentially watch it as just being fans of the game, right? And that's just half. But realistically, you could drop that number to what? Maybe like 10 to 20% of the gamers who've played this probably are going to watch it.
Yeah, right? And I think it's because of another reason is that sometimes you don't want to play the game. Like, I can't tell you how many times when I was younger, I type in like Kingdom Hearts movie, and it was just all the cutscenes put together because I just wanted to hear the story again. I didn't want to play through the sections and just to get the story. I'm like, oh, I want to get to this really good part. So that's what it is for us. It's like, oh, I don't have to play the game. I can just listen to this and watch this good story and get that content again. Absolutely. And in all, like you said, we're not the target audience. If anything, right? If people didn't like it and they watched the first episode, people would get upset. They would boot up Last of Us Part 1 or whatever, and then play through it again and be like, this is what I remember. And I got the story again. That's what's making, like, me watching the first episode already makes me want to play the game. So it's just one of those things.
It's just, again, it doesn't affect, and I think there's just this stigma that, oh, you can't tell the same story because it's already been done. And I don't think that's true.
No.
Like, I just don't think it's true. And I think I'm glad that this show took the route that it did so that it can prove that point that sometimes you just need to make good directional calls on how things are shot.
Yep.
As far as, comparing from game to TV show, like, you can do all of these things that happened already and we will still love it. And your base audience is still going to go. Yeah. Like, we're still going to watch every single episode. I mean, Chris and I didn't even like Halo, and we watched the whole series. But, like, you know what I mean? And but that's what I'm saying. Like, it's one of those things, though, right? Like, we have a connection to it. A majority of us are going to continue watching it. And honestly, if you piss off the gaming audience, clearly it doesn't matter because you could still potentially get a season 2, which is what Halo did anyway.
Yeah.
So like, you know what I mean? So I don't understand. You don't have to tell me that you can't form the same story because you totally can. And we're seeing why that can work here.
Yeah.
Right. So,
and thank you HBO, because I've had that moment where I work with a older generation and everything like that in my job, and whenever I talk about these games and they're like, a lot of them are like, what's going on? So whenever I talked about The Last of Us coming out, they're like, what is that? I was like, well, it's a game. I told them the premise of the game, and they're like, I immediately see in their eyes, they're like, man, I really want to know what happens in this game. That sounds awesome, but I'm not gonna play. I don't play video games. What do I do? Exactly. So it's I all those moments lead up to this, where it's like all those times that I've told a story or I explain my my excitement for something, and somebody's just like, oh man, that's really cool, but they know they're never gonna touch the game because they're just not into games. You know what I mean? They think it's complicated, and it might be for them. So they're like, man, that sounds like an awesome game, but it's just not something I do. So the fact that I'm able to share this now, like I know I'm gonna go into work and somebody's gonna ask me, hey, I watched that show you were talking about. Like, is it the same thing as a game? And I'm gonna be able to piece some things in together, and be like, oh, like and it's so close together that it's like they played the game with me. They just didn't do the middle parts and everything. So it's gonna be an awesome.
Do the quick action gameplays.
Yeah, it's a cool thing to open up conversation with everybody else. I'm very excited for everybody at my job to watch it, and I can talk to them about
and like I said,
and connect with them on a new level.
You want to bring in a new audience so that even if they want to go play the game, they can. But if they want to watch it, they can watch it. And I feel like, again, Last of Us is a story you do not have to change. I feel it's already perfect, and HBO is showing us that. But I just want to get into one more important scene before we wrap it all up. But basically, the scene where obviously we see Tess and Tess, Joel, and Marlena come with this agreement saying, like, we'll give you everything you need if you transport Ellie to Boston, or main headquarters, so that we can. So now we know what our journey is going to be, what the reason is for it. But before any of that, they all agree to it. Obviously, we have those cool scenes with Ellie and Joel being snappy at each other. Her cracking out the code about the what does the time
perfect
means, and she was like, I got you. Like,
it was like that beat of everything of like, oh my gosh, she has the same thing as that. Like, he's like, oh no, she's like, 80s is trouble, and he's like, hey, listen here, and then
so like, it's just showing their chemistry. We can already potential, all of it is potential that we all see that's what it's going to work, right? So I love seeing scenes like that. They obviously, they're heading out, it starts raining, and that's when again we knew what was about to happen if you played, because it was like, oh, wait a second, this all looks familiar. And like it starts to go down that path. And this is why I thought it was all, like, when you think about it, it made sense why they showed it in the first episode, right? Because what happens, Joel gets put in a scenario where they're the guard did tell him earlier, don't come out because, like, the things might be a little bit different. He does the random testing to see who is infected. Clearly Joel, like, gets, Ellie stabs because she knows that she's been,
that she is infected
that she's infected. But so that happens. We see Tess react to it, but we also see that, like, Joel is, like, not moving away from Ellie because now he gets put in a situation that he was in already, and instinctively, not even thinking of, again, subconsciously trying to protect the little girl that he couldn't. He clearly snaps.
Well, yeah, he has the PTSD moment, man. It haunts him, and that's why he gets carried away and ends up beating that guard to death, because he's just like,
he's getting that frustration now that he couldn't do like at the time, right? So
and it's but yeah, as you were saying, the whole raining scene, it's just crazy, man. And I've if you go on Twitter or Facebook and all that stuff, you'll find clips that people are putting from the game like side by sides. They're showing
IGN's did a really good one.
Oh, it's so good, and the fact that we're getting the, I'm ready to see the bus, like they crawl underneath the bus. They're in the little pipeline, all that stuff. I'm like, dude, this is insane. This is insane to me.
But again, it just shows how easy it is to do. Right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not that, obviously, I'm not saying that putting the sets and all that. I'm just saying, like, from a standpoint of when you have the budget and things like that, you can replicate these games. Like, don't tell me it's hard. Like, as far like when you have the big budget behind you and you can do it. Like, you know what I mean? So we see that, but the interesting, like I said, one of the best things, and we kind of alluded to it earlier, is when Ellie sees Joel snap, and then they talked about this at the end where she gets that sense of protection, right? Where it's kind of like she now sees like, oh wait, somebody out there can protect me from this thing. But we also find out about her being infected, her being bitten, which again, play the DLC if you want to know how that happened. But yeah, so you see her get bit. I know we don't see her get bit, but we see that she's bitten. She's pleading to Tess, saying, "Listen, look at this. Does this look like it's a day old? Like, you know, this has been 3 weeks because it's like fully healed and all that stuff."
Which is great because it's off the side because it's still following Joel and he's still coming out of it. Like you hear that high pitched whine and he's still calming down from what just happened, and you're getting that offbeat story off to the side and everything. Yeah. I love that.
And just all the work, the camera work, everything was great. And then they're having that conversation. They know they have to leave now because clearly, you know, some stuff went down, and you know what? You can't turn back now. So the whole scene just leading into, and then of course seeing that last shot of us basically about to go into the city where the game goes in, and just seeing the cars and all of the like the buildings that you know that are about to be explored and all that, man. Like even talking about it is giving me goosebumps right now because it ends on such a perfect thing, and then we hear the music playing, and it's like, man, that what a way to have a first episode to draw your whole audience in.
Well, the
gamers,
the radio,
and the new people.
Yeah, the radio. Whenever that last shot of the radio and the radio kicks on, and that song comes on, and it's an '80s song, so it lets you know that they're in trouble. So I was like, that's a really good send off for the episode of like we're heading into a lot of trouble.
So it was just awesome. Overall, there's the whole thing was my favorite. Like I can't even give you
that's what I'm saying.
I can't give you one favorite. It was just like, again, this was every like, and again, this is just one episode, so I'm not saying this is for the whole series, but that episode alone was pretty much every gamer's dream of when they talk about an adaptation. Like that is what we want in an adaptation. I hope, if the rest of the series is this, then we're in for literally the best adaptation that we.
Yeah, and there's no more excuses for anybody else. If we get a video game movie, a video game show, anything like that, we're gonna be like, HBO literally laid out the map and showed you.
It was very simple
that it works. Yeah. So
yeah, I'm excited for us to continue doing this. We're gonna have you guys. I'm also doing shorts of like my initial reaction. I actually dropped the first one today. Those will get better over time once
shorts
I
with
set. Yeah, like just my initial reactions to the episodes. And then Chris and I will continue to do these for the longer form, because I know people like to listen to these too and hear our in-depth thoughts. So
yeah,
Chris will probably drop some shorts too of his like initial reactions. So
we'll see.
We'll figure stuff out. We're doing a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, I'm gonna take the time too that Troy Baker, he's also doing a review podcast on the show. So if you would like to team up or have Last Place Fire Team as guests, because we do this, we share a lot of the same things. We're doing the same thing here. So let's just become one team. All right. You come on our show, we'll go on your show, and we'll have a good time. So if you guys could clip this and send it out.
Or we should.
I'll clip it. I'll clip it. And then we're going to send it out to everybody. I'm putting it on. I'm telling you, I'm clipping this moment right now.
Awesome. So this one was a little bit longer than normal because the episode wasn't out.
They're gonna be like movies, man. So it's gonna be like our movie reviews, where it's gonna be a little bit longer. But I'm sure people are gonna be excited to talk about it. So
exactly. So let us know what you guys thought of the episode. We would love to hear you guys' opinion on the episode. Let us know what you guys thought of the first episode. Let us know if you loved it, you hated it. thumbs up, thumbs down, 5 stars, 0 stars. Let us know. We want to know. Chris wants to know.
Yeah, if you say hate it, don't just put hate it. I need a 6-page essay
explanation
of what is going on with you.
Not even a 6-page. Like, I can understand if you say fine, but like I do want to know either way. So but yeah, we'll catch you guys on Tuesday for the show, and then we'll catch you guys next week for episode 2. But until then, Fire Team out.